would be able to listen to the recording, inshallah. And here we go. All right. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. This is an interesting topic today, and I thought more people will be able to benefit from this. But unfortunately, people are not here. We changed the timings also for them. The topic is basically some case studies on some selected aircraft accidents and the analysis of these accidents. So inshallah, we'll take a look at some of the ones. The overall view of this presentation, if you will, is essentially to look at an overview of global aircraft accidents, how it started, and what's the history of aircraft accidents, which will be followed by a very recent one, which is 8303 Airbus 320 accident. All of you are aware of this, and all of you have had various versions of this in this analysis, but of course the official version is also out, but although the finalization is still to be done, but all the major points have been given in the preliminary as well as the interim report, and we're going to talk about that as well. Then we'll talk on another recent one, which is F-16 aerobatics practice, which was, I think, on the 11th of March, but this was a preparation for 23rd March, where one of the finest of the pilots and also the best of the aircraft that we have, we lost that. Very sad. All these incidents are, of course, sad, but we need to analyze it, take a look at it, and also see what lessons do we learn. Before that, there was an ATR accident coming from the northern areas to Islamabad, and Junaid Jamshed was in that aircraft. So we'll talk a little bit about that and see what we have to learn. And then, every time we talk about such incidents, then the 9/11 case comes up. And again, 9/11 also has a lot of controversies, a lot of different versions of the analysis. Many people believe in one way, while others do not believe the way it was done. And of course, there are a lot of gray areas within the entire, the way it was depicted, the way it was projected, and what were the objectives and so on. So inshallah, we'll take a look at that. And this will be followed by something that in aviation history, two Boeing 747s in Tenerife, an island, and where this accident took place. We'll talk about that. And this is studied on a very regular basis in all the CRMs, which is mandatory for all pilots and other managers and engineers, to study human factors in aviation. And this is a classical case, so I'm sure all of you are aware of it, but we'll quickly go over that as well, just to revise on what needs to be done. And finally, I'd also like to mention some personal incidents. I haven't, luckily, in my career, never had something that could be called an accident, but I had some very serious incidents that could turn into an accident. So I'm sure this will be interesting for all those who are listening. So let's talk about the term accident, incident, and occurrence. What's the difference? Maybe Mariam, you want to try? What's the difference between accident, incident, and occurrence?
So occurrence could be anything that has happened, and incident does not involve any fatalities, and accident involves deaths of people.
Very good. Very good. So, Danesh, you want to add something to it?
Sir, everything that he told, I was also thinking about that.
Very good. Very
accident are catastrophic, sir. That is fatal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Incidents are not that fatal, sir. There a lot of incidents combine together to make an accident.
Okay. Sometimes incidents are indicators that an accident
Yes,
is
yes, sir.
likely to come.
Indicators, exactly.
Yes, that's correct. All right. So Annex 13 of ICAO, they talk about how to investigate and things like that. And important thing is that if an aircraft is there on the ground and there's nobody there, and it, for whatever reason, maybe short circuit or something, gets burnt, that would not be categorized as an accident. That'll be an occurrence. This is something that not many people are aware of. So whenever it is categorized as an accident, the boarding of personnel with an intent to fly, and of course to right up to disembarkation, yani when they get out of the aircraft. So during that period, if something happens, an occurrence occurs where there's loss of life, there's loss of the aircraft itself, or the aircraft gets lost, then it would be an accident. So it is if an aircraft from outside is coming in, and that is either flying over your territory, some aircraft that belongs to another country, then it is the responsibility of the state where the accident takes place, is the responsibility of the country in which the accident took place. So the three prerequisites, it has to be either a personal injury to an extent where it becomes fatally injured, meaning that there is a time frame that if somebody gets seriously injured, how do you define whether it will be an accident or not an accident? And how would you define whether it's serious injury and what is not a serious injury? Any idea? Mariam? How will you differentiate between the two?
Sir, I'm not sure.
Okay. The limiting factor that has been given in Annex 13 is 30 days. So if somebody gets injured and he dies within 30 days, that aircraft would be categorized as an accident. So somebody gets into the aircraft and let's say crash landing takes place, and one person out of that accident that has taken place, or that occurrence that has taken place, one person is very seriously ill, he's admitted into the hospital, and if he dies within 30 days, that occurrence would be termed as an accident. So after 30 days, it will remain as a serious incident or a very serious incident, but not an accident. The second thing is that aircraft must, either or, the aircraft or, both the things can also be there, where the aircraft sustains significant damage. When you say significant damage, it is called structural failure or hull loss. That means it cannot be easily repaired, and the aircraft cannot be airworthy again. So that's another criteria for an accident. And the third is that that you cannot see the aircraft. It went into the sea, or it went to a jungle, or it went into snowy mountains, and it is inaccessible. You cannot reach it, right? And in that case also, it is called an accident, where you cannot reach, it is not accessible. So, you know the term MIA? What is MIA? Mariam, any idea? Hello?
So missing in action.
Missing in action, yes. Missing in action. This is used basically for personnel who are in war zone, and generally they are not traceable as to where did they go. So instead of saying that they are dead or they are likely to be dead, they generally classify them as MIA. So I thought I'll just mention this here, but nothing to do with the criteria for the accidents. Okay, then we have a term called anthropogenic hazards. Anthropogenic hazards, are you aware of anthropology? There's a discipline called anthropology. Mariam, any idea what is anthropology?
Sir, it's about humans.
Yes, it is about humans and their environment. Humans and their environment. It's called anthropology. In basically, you will see that all these hazards are, related with humans, because either humans are involved in it, or either because they did something or because something they did not do. For example, they were supposed to do something, but they did not do. For example, you forgot to do landing gear down action. So you did not lower the gear and the aircraft landed, and of course it got damaged to an extent, or maybe some people either on the ground or in the aircraft got seriously injured and somebody died. Then it'll be an accident, right? And these are called anthropogenic hazards, right? So hazard is defined as an agent which has the potential to cause harm to a vulnerable target. So this is how hazard is. So what would you call a vulnerable target? What is a vulnerable target?
So that can be easily hit.
Yes, something that is likely, there is a chance of getting hurt by that, okay? So the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or sometimes even emotionally, you can say it is, vulnerable. So you could be vulnerable to a certain environment where you may be harmed, or you may suffer emotional disturbance or something like that. So that's the thing. I thought just to make everything clear, I've also put in hazard and vulnerable as to exactly what it is in the anthropogenic hazards. All right, some of the facts. What do you think was the first aircraft accident that was there? Any idea? In the aviation history. Any idea, Mariam? No idea? All right. So accidents, first one I say is, there are two categories. One is heavier than air and the other is lighter than air. So Abbas bin Farnas, he made wings and he made a contraption in 1875 AD. That's recognized by the Western world also, that he was the first man to actually fly, take to the skies and fly. But since this was not lighter than air, it was not a balloon or something, he could only glide downwards because of that. But that was, and why I call it an accident is because of the injury, because he did not have a tailplane and his back got seriously injured, and because of that injury he died. Although he didn't die within 30 days, it was longer. According to the correct, or according to the current criteria, it may not be classified as an accident. But in general, if you look at it, he was the first one to fly, and he was also the first one, because of that accident, he got injured to an extent where he had to lose his life. So that I classify it as the first accident. And then in France, lighter than aircraft were the balloons, right? I mean, these are, they started balloons very early in the many hundreds of years ago. So 1700 onwards, there were a lot of balloons that were flying around. And the first accident that took place was by a gentleman called Rosere. And this person actually named that balloon also under his name. He was a French person. In 1785, he lost his life because of that balloon that came in and crashed. Then, of course, when we come to heavier than air, modern day flying, it was Orville Wright who was the pilot, and he was taking with him, it's a Navy Lieutenant Thomas Selfridge or something is his name, I think Selfridge. He was the passenger. So Orville made a crash landing, and because of that crash landing, the other person, Lieutenant Thomas, he lost his life. This was, just 5 years after the first flight took place. That is 1903. Orville and Wilbur, they started flying, and after 5 years, they had the first accident. That was Orville Wright in 1908. Okay. All right, Mariam, you are going off and on, but anyway.
There is some network issue. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. All right. So total fatal accidents that have taken place, according to Wiki, is Wikipedia, is 220. So our entire aviation industry is not too old. It's only a little over 100 years, commercial aviation. And within that, we have lost 220 total number of aircrafts, which can be classified as accidents. And the total fatalities that are there, the spelling is a French spelling, I think, fatalities in the air is 6,611, and the total fatalities on the ground is 2,881. This is just figures and facts to get an idea as to what this all is about. So let's take a quick look at all the major disasters that have taken place in aviation. Major disasters. One of the major disaster was in 1974. It was a Turkish flight 981, and this was surprisingly. In the olden days, this was a number of accidents took place because of decompression. So you're all aware of what decompression can do, right? So this was a Turkish jumbo, and 346 people died in this one. So you have idea as to, Mariam, how do people die because of decompression?
So loss of breathlessness. I mean breathlessness.
Yes.
And the pressure is not according to the ground.
Yes. Basically, it is lack of oxygen. When decompression takes place, the correct amount of oxygen that the human body needs or your lungs need to convert and absorb into your blood, and that's how the red blood corpuscles, RBCs, they give you all that energy and everything. That is lost. So lack of oxygen is the main cause, because of the aircraft gets deep compressed or your loss of pressurization. So that is why even today, loss of pressurization is a very serious emergency. So initial days, there were a number of accidents that took place because of this, and incidents also. So 33 major accidents with 200 plus fatalities were there in the entire history of aviation. This includes, if you take less than 200, then number is much more. And in 1985, again, Japanese airline, JAL, So Japan has 2 airlines. Which is the other one? Mariam, any idea? The other one is ANA, All Nippon Airways. Both are very good airlines. They're regarded as very professional airlines. And both these airlines, yes, ANA. So 520 people. So this was the single aircraft with such a large number of people dying because of decompression. And this was, I think, from within Japan. This aircraft was flying from Osaka to one of these places in Tokyo or somewhere. But this was a major, drawback in the history of aviation that took place. In 1977, this is the Tenerife disaster, which I talked to you. This is studied very extensively in all the safety and human factors and CRM. CRM is, you're aware of CRM? Mariam?
Crew resource management.
Yes, crew resource management. So everybody has to go through this crew resource management mandatorily with, after periodic, few months, or sometimes within a year you have to do certain exercises and certain training. And in that, many of the time they discuss this disaster, where 583 people died. This is on 2 jumbo 747s. We'll talk more in detail as we move forward. In 1996, over India, another mid-air collision took place between Saudi 747 and a Kazakhstan IL-76. IL-76 is also a big aircraft, and 349 people died in this one. This was also one of the big disasters that are there. And then they talk about 2001. Now, is 2001 World Trade Center, would it be classified as an accident?
Sir, I don't think so.
Okay, good. You're right, absolutely. It is not an accident, but it is classified as a terrorist attack. It's a disaster for sure, but it is not an accident. It was sort of planned and executed. So therefore, it is not an accident, but we can call it a disaster, and that's what the heading is. And almost 3,000 people died in this, and several thousand got injured in the World Trade Center. All right, let's talk about PIA Flight 8303. The PIA flight was piloted by Captain Sajjad Gul, and the first officer was Osman Azam. Both of them were qualified. Both of them were experienced, and they had flown this sector, Karachi Lahore, for a reasonably good length of time, and especially Captain Sajjad was highly experienced in this sector. So they took off at 1903. This is what the aircraft that you see over here, and you will see that some of the interesting points were that as they were coming in to landing, everything was uneventful. Everything was going normal, and then sometimes before landing, I think about maybe 20 minutes or so, when they started the descent or approaching to descent, that is the time they found that at the point where they were supposed to be, they were higher. And that height was, so they dove, actually undercarriage has a certain limit. You cannot lower the undercarriage, which is your landing gears, if your speed is higher than a certain limit. So they did not lower the undercarriage, and they dive down so that they can descend at a faster rate than it is normal. So ultimately, when they came in the final approach and they touched down, they were still high on speed, and they had actually undercarriages up at that time. In fact, you will see that they had scraped the runway because the engines touched the ground, and there was no undercarriage at that time. So they decided at that time, they probably realized they went around, or you can call it go round, which is the same thing. And sometimes the Americans, they call it barked landing, B-A-L-K-E-D, barked landing. And barked landing is also, went go round is also termed by using this sentence or using this terminology. So we also see that RAT, which is Ram A turbine, which is also visible once they went round, indicating that the main engines were not working. Are you aware of RAT? Because you were there in Air Blue, right?
Yes, sir. Ram air turbine.
Yes. So ram air turbine actually kicks in once the engines are no longer providing, the hydraulic power, etc., which is used for your control surfaces, etc. So there's a ram air is basically the air pressure that is coming in, and it runs the turbine, and that provides the hydraulic pressure, and then it goes to wherever it is needed for controls, etc. So it is visible in the picture that the RAT, which is ram air turbine, had come up. And the other important point is that when the aircraft had actually crashed, it was approaching at a very high altitude, which is at a very high, attitude, which is, in other words, you can say high angle of attack. So high angle of attack is something that is indicative of, approaching stall. So I do not know as to why they continued over this. They probably some kind of an estimate, and their ability to estimate was also hampered for whatever reason we'll discuss. But it is visible that it was at a very high angle of attack once it was coming in. And coming in on the approach, of course, they did not make the runway, and 1.3 kilometers or so short of the runway, the aircraft crash landed into the area where there were residential houses in that, and very, very close to each other. So a lot of damage took place on the ground. Okay, this picture, as you can see, gives you some idea as to how the engines got scraped, that you can see over here. And you can also see the RAT, not very clear over here, but in some pictures it is visible that it is deployed. So this was about this. The interim report and the lessons of this very sad incident that took place is something like this. You're aware of CVR and FDR, right, Mariam?
Yes, sir. Cockpit voice recorder.
And FDR?
Flight data recorder.
Flight data recorder. So both these were recovered, although initially they had some issues, but they were sent to France and they recovered, and that gave them some more insight on what actually had possibly happened. So this was there, and they said it is also analyzed that both the pilot and the co-pilot were not following the CRM callouts. So what is happening in CRM callouts is that crew resource management gives you all the SOPs and best practices that they must do. There are certain things that the pilot in command, right, whoever is actually flying, and there is pilot not flying, he has to call out certain checks and procedures. So many of those checks and procedures were not followed. They were not followed. And it's very strange as to why such thing was there, but the fact is that it was there. Sometimes complacency gets in, and because of that, they take shortcuts. So I was talking about they were high on that point. There's an imaginary point called Mughni, and these points are very common around the airfield, so that if the air traffic controller wants you to go, or so there are certain procedures, they give certain coordinates and they give it a name. So Mughni, which is like 15 nautical miles away from the airfield, they were supposed to be at 3,000, whereas actually they were somewhere slightly less than 10,000 feet. So which was very, very high. So again, like I said, in this accident, it is very evident that they were not following the procedures, and they were sort of doing things in their own way. And with experience, sometimes people, it is very common to find that they are so confident that they can handle it. They'll put the nose down and increase their speed, and then reduce their speed by using various other means. And maneuver the thing. Many times you'll find that experienced pilots want to highlight this to the younger ones, that yes, I can do whatever type of thing, that that kind of approach is there. I'm not saying that it was sort of the possible thing, but it is one of the likely things that is there, and it does happen. So also the call by the ATC of being high was disregarded. So, the air traffic controller is looking at the radar, and he knows that this aircraft 8303 was supposed to be at 3,000 feet at Mughni, and he's registering somewhere close to 10,000 feet, which is, substantially higher. If it had been like 1,000 feet higher or so, it would have been different. But he gave a call, but it was not very, I would say, in a very affirmative way, not a very positive way. It was not, it was only advisory. And of course, the air traffic controller generally advises, but some of the controllers, force you to follow those instructions. And but if the air traffic controller is also not very experienced and he's junior, then his volume, his tone, his the way he uses his words, etc., are very soft. And the senior captains generally, would not regard the instructions, because they think they can always do the maneuvering so that they can get back to the correct flight path. So that is also something which was very evident, and something that was actually being done, it seemed. And also, let me give you one quick example of this. I was coming in from San Diego in the United States to Dallas Airport, Love Airfield, Dallas. And on the finals, I was flying a Cessna 421, a twin-engine aircraft. And I was single. I mean, I was not flying with anybody else. So right on the short finals, I saw a jumbo 747 right in front of me. And he was like maybe a little close to a mile. I'm just estimating, because eyeballing is not accurate. But the radar that the ATC controller is looking is much more accurate. So I thought I'm very close, and I might get into the jet wash, and which is called wake turbulence. And sometimes small aircraft have had accidents because of this, and because of that, many accidents have taken place. So I gave a call to the tower that I'm very close to the 747 and I'd like to go around. He said, negative, you better stay where you are and continue the approach because there's so many aircraft behind me. So it's such a positive, instructions given that you had to follow. So I said, fine, he knows what he's doing because he's looking at the radar and he knows exactly where that wake is going. So the point here is that the call by the ATC and their control of the ATC, the way they give instructions also is something that matters in how the captains would react to it. Okay. Also, surprisingly, not surprisingly, I would say, there's EGPWS, which is Enhanced Ground Proximity Warning System. So when your undercarriage is up, there's horn blowing, and there is ground proximity, means you're coming close to the ground. That warning system is also, there's a radio altimeter that tells you as to how high you are above the ground. And that was also, warning was coming in, the undercarriage as well as EGPWS. But again, that was disregarded. Why was this disregarded? It's very difficult for anybody to say, but it seems we'll discuss this in a bit as to what possible things could have happened. So in interim report that came up on this was about this, that according to the flight data recorder, at 7,000 feet, they had lowered the gears and they picked it up again. So why did they do that is something that probably a detailed report will reveal. But so far, the report that I have gone through does not give any logical reasons as to why would one do that. Then they had lowered it and the gears, and at 500 feet, just on the finals coming up, short finals, they retracted the gears, which indicates that they probably wanted to go around. Whoever picked up, either there was no coordination or not enough coordination between the first officer and the captain, or there was some confusion that whether they should go around or they should land. So the bottom line is that the 500 feet, the gears were retracted. So who was the pilot in command? Most likely it is the captain pilot in command, and most likely the first officer picked up the gears and he thought that we are too high, speed is too high, and we must go around. So he might have taken that action. But these figures are from the flight data recorder. And there's a thing called go-no-go cognitive dissonance. Anybody? Let's see, Mozam has joined in. Mozam, any idea what is cognitive dissonance?
No, sir.
No. Mariam, आपको idea है? Cognitive dissonance होता है when you are approaching, let's say you're going on the road, you do not know whether should I take if it is a Y type of thing, you don't know really whether you're going to go left or you're going to go right. So you're just thinking till the last moment, what should I do, right? So many times in life also it happens, should I take this decision or should I take that decision? So when there is this kind of a confusion in your mind, this is called cognitive dissonance. So most likely the way the actions took place, it seemed that there was a cognitive dissonance in the pilots, and also there was some lack of complete harmony and coordination between the pilot and the captain, or the first officer and the captain. And because of this, one person is picking up while the other continues with the approach and wanted to land. So this is what is called a communication gap, and the communication gap is not only between the captain and the first officer. There's also in the air traffic controller. And air traffic controller is also not very assertive. Assertive means that it should be forcefully, once the safety is in question, then they must be very forceful about it. And in fact, once the aircraft touched down on the engines, the air traffic controller noticed it, but he did not announce it. And what he did was, on the landline, he told the approach control. The approach control is also sort of, he has the ability to talk to them, talk to the pilot or the captain, but he also did not say anything. So they touched the engines on the runway, and then they took off, because they thought, if they continue like this, then there will be a fire, and probably they will be in more trouble. So they took a decision of going around. So when they went round, and after that the engines started failing. It is quite possible that debris went into the turbine, and the fan, the blades got broken, and there are other accessories under the engine also. So all those things combined, both the engines ultimately failed. So one failed, and they started having less power first, and then subsequently both the engines failed. Gear up warning horn was disregarded. Yes, that has been made very clear in the interim report, as well as the preliminary report. I personally feel that this was in the days of Ramadan, right? And fasting, which is, most of and it was a Friday, right? So Friday, generally people regard that as something which is very religiously awarding. So people say, yeah, theek hai, I did my good breakfast. Sehri was good, heavy. And it's afternoon, but I think I'm okay. I've flown so much in this area, and they can fast and they can fly. That should not be a problem. But without realizing that fasting has a lot of impact on your thinking ability, on your reaction times, and your analysis of situation. Not many people, although it is again taught to you, all pilots have to go through this thing that fasting is not good, and this may even deteriorate your ability to fly. So this is my personal analysis on this, that with this thinking in their mind that we are experienced and we can handle all this, but actually because of the degradation in their sugar level in the blood, their ability to fly and their ability to think and analyze was deteriorating. So, and then once you come into pressure or into tension, then the sugar level shoots up even further low, shoots down, I would say, and your reactions and everything is going to go even worse. Let me give you an example. Back in a long time ago, I was in my initial days. I was a flight lieutenant at that time. I had just become operational, and that I was a test pilot. I used to perform test pilot duties also on F-86 Sabre. And so our squadron had moved to Quetta, which is PIA base Mungli now. And there were 7 aircraft that were in Masroor that went through various inspections and engine change, etc., so many, and all of them had to be air tested. So I was sent from Quetta to do this air test, and I remember it was a Friday and it was Ramadan time. So I said, these are all air tests are generally about like half an hour, but you have to do a lot of things together. I said, I'm young, I'm smart, I can handle it. So I said, I'll start off very early in the morning and I'll fast, and I will be able to do all these 7 things. And my family was I had recently got married, and my family was in Quetta. So I said, I'll finish this thing today in one day. On Friday and Saturday, I will fly back to Quetta. So, I started doing all these air tests 1, 2, 3, 4. By the time I came to the 7th one, it was now, I was coming in for landing. I was really, really tired. Sugar level was, so low that when I was on the finals, my eyesight got blurred. I just could not see the runway. Everything was grayed out. So I said, this is the end. I mean, either I eject or if I land, it'll be a crash landing, because I had nothing to be seen in front of me. So I just pressed on, and then I took a deep breath, and I don't know, I prayed whatever I could, and Alhamdulillah, barely managed to land on that the runway. And subsequently, of course, I gave a call to air traffic controller that, I'm switch off just at the end of the runway, and I would like to be towed back. So, that is how I got saved on that. But nonetheless, it was, something that can happen to anybody. And this is all because, people think that they can outsmart the physiology and the limitations, but one has to be careful. So my personal analysis, based on my experiences, that both these young captain and the first officer were fasting, and their sugar level was low, in my opinion. Anyway, so I told you about this test flight thing, and I had written down that I must narrate this, and that is how it can affect anybody, even with high experience, to make mistakes. And so there's a series of mistakes which clearly indicates that there was something seriously wrong. Okay, I'll quickly go over. You want a break, or should we continue? It's just 2 of you, but it is being recorded so others can see it.
Continue, sir.
Okay, all right. Muazzam, okay with you too?
Yes, sure.
All right. So a lot of people, think they do not know exactly what F-16 crashed on March 11, which was the preparation for the 23rd March. And this person was a Share of Gun Award winner, the pilot, and he made a mistake in the split S maneuver. Just to give you an idea what a split S is, you actually pull up the aircraft and then you invert the aircraft once it is like 30 degrees or thereabouts. It's an estimate. It could be anywhere between 25 to 35 or even 40 degrees, or sometimes even less than 30 degrees. You don't look at, whenever you're doing, in fact, aerobatics, you're all the time looking outside and not looking at the instruments. So, because instruments are there for instrument flying essentially, but aerobatics, whenever you're doing, it's all visual. So this person is a very good pilot. He's a Share of Gun Award. By the way, I'm also a Share of Gun Award winner. I had this person's, let me show you this picture, Noman Akram. And when he got this thing, I was also in the same ceremony, because they had called old Share of Guns also. There are like about 5 of us, along with this gentleman, Wing Commander Noman Shahid. We had a picture with the same air chief, and we were given some, mementos of our good old days. So this person, what I'm trying to say is, was doing the maneuver, and he probably misjudged the time to turn this aircraft into a split S and then recover that aircraft while doing like a half loop. So when he was pulling down, coming down, this is the time that he realized, but it was too late. He could not eject because you don't want to remove your hand from the control column and the other hand is on the throttle. And you just continue pulling, but there's a thing called mush. Because of the judgment error, there's a thing called mush factor. The aircraft actually nose is gone up, but because of the momentum, the aircraft continues to go down. So that is what had happened, and because of that mush factor, the aircraft hit the ground. Of course, he was also pulling high Gs. There is a possibility. We've studied this before also because of a phenomena called G-lock. G-L-O-C. G-lock is because of high Gs, the blood from the brain and the upper part of the body and the heart, it goes down, it flows down. And there could be a loss of consciousness because of that high G. So it is quite possible that because of the high Gs that he was pulling, and in F-16 you can pull up to 9 Gs. That 9 Gs means 9 times the weight of your aircraft, the weight of your body. So, you know, that's why you wear anti-G suits or anti-G suits. So that's also a possibility, but most likely the aircraft mushed and there was a judgment error, in my opinion, that made these things. And these things, you know, you are trained to take risks. Every day, I was also, alhamdulillah, performing aerobatics, 23rd March, 14th August, and all these 6th September it used to be. And many a times you, you know, practice so much at altitude, and then you keep coming down, and then you do maneuvers that are, you know, sometimes very, very interesting and fascinating to look at from the ground. I also have a record in Mushak to do 13 continuous rolls at 100 feet above the ground. So that was something that not many people have been able to do it. In fact, after I left the academy where I was the instructor there, then onwards they discontinued because nobody could do that maneuver. Anyway, let's get back to this is of course the picture that you've seen already. Let me see. Okay. All right. Talk on very briefly on another crash that took place. Junaid Jamshed was on board. This was on 7th of December. This was also again, you know, all these incidents are very disheartening and very sad. But you know, this is part of the game, part of aviation. So here in this aircraft, there was an engine failure, and this was also a human factors related accident where one of the mechanics, he left an OSG, is an overspeed governor of the turboprop, and there's a pin that was missing, and because of that the engine performance limits were exceeded and one of the engines failed. But then the question is, if one engine fails in any twin engine aircraft, aircraft for that matter, is designed to fly on single engine. That is why you have two engines. So why didn't it fly on one single engine? That is a question that needs to be asked. So the answer to this is that either the pilots did not handle the thing as per procedures, which is a possibility, but most likely, I think, because the weight and balance is also very important. If the weight is more, then the controllability is difficult with single engine. So since the aircraft was coming with full load, it is sometimes also very possible, and many of times people make this mistake. They overload it because they may be bringing in apples or, you know, sometimes various other things from one place to another, especially coming from the north. You bring dry fruits and all those things are available. And the overall weight of the aircraft may exceed. And sometimes they don't declare it. So the pilot would have no idea as to why the aircraft is not being controlled. But it will be very, very tricky and very difficult to control in that case. So that is another possibility that could have been there, but not mentioned in the report that was revealed. But I know the captain of this aircraft was the son of one of my students, who is also a captain, and he had gone to Turkish Airways, and so I knew the family very well. And just before the aircraft, flying before the aircraft, he had given a message to his sister stating that I'm not very comfortable with the way maintenance is done on these aircraft, and but we have to fly, or something of that nature. So there are things which again indicate lack of communication between the overall organizational culture. So if there is something, they must speak up. And if there is, so this is the, as aviation related professionals and ultimately managers and executives, inshallah, you have to make sure that the culture is in aviation is such that everybody speaks up what is right. And nobody should mind if there is some error that is being done and that needs to be rectified. So this was one of the lessons I thought I'll share with you. Okay, 9/11, everybody talks about this thing. Who will tell me why did they name it 9/11? Why is this incident called 9/11?
So there are a lot of stories. Some people say that number 10 is given to God and 9 and 11 is for the devil, Satan. And
Okay.
some people say it is the helpline number, so they try to give a signal that these people needed help. There are a lot of stories related to this.
Saima?
It was the day is mentioned and the year is mentioned 9/11.
September 11th.
Yes.
Okay. So it has basically two aspects. What Mariam is saying also, as some people say that, but 911 is a number that is basically a telephone number all across United States, where if you dial that number, there is a police force that comes in with all the medical help and to support you. So basically creating a 911 type of situation for America. So America needs to dial 911 type of thing. So that is another way why some people have interpreted 911 as an emergency for United States, creating an emergency. So what was the stated objective? Why did they do this? So, we can discuss what the actual might have been, but what is stated in the books and the analysis is that Al-Qaeda, as is mentioned, you may not subscribe, or I may not subscribe to all that is being stated in the results, but the fact is that this is what majority of the people believe it was, and which may have some truth to it also. Al-Qaeda wanted the United States and NATO forces to get out from Afghanistan. They removed that, and that is why, since they had no other choice either to fight back, they had difficulty. So they said, we can do this and harm you. And the second thing was that U.S. support for Israel should stop. Again, this was one of the objectives. And the third was presence of U.S. troops and KSA. And of course, there are some other things like in Iraq and other things that they had mentioned. These were some of the major objectives that were stated as the objective of Al-Qaeda. Initially, they had not said that this is because of us, but later on, Al-Qaeda said, yes, we did it. But again, there are a lot of doubts and apprehensions and reasons to believe that the entire thing is not as it is depicted. Okay, as published reports, there were 4 aircraft, and incidentally, I was there in Washington, Dulles. I had a company over there, and I was in the office when I heard an aircraft go very low. Whenever an aircraft flies very low and a big aircraft flies very low, there's a huge sound that follows it. So I said, it is very much like what we do in the Air Force mass raids. Mass raids are when you're attacking an enemy with 16 aircraft, and all these 16 aircraft go through one place. It shakes up the entire place. So that kind of voice came in. So I quickly got out of the building, and I saw there was nothing there, but I could still hear it. And then, of course, when I came back on the television, it was stated that two aircraft have hit the tower, the Twin Towers, or the World Trade Center. And this aircraft at Washington Dulles was going for Pentagon, and it did hit the Pentagon on one side, but also there's a way as to what the targets were. The targets were World Trade Center. 2 of the aircraft went there. Pentagon, 1 of the aircraft went, and the other aircraft that did not reach the target, but was probably, they say, heading for one of the nuclear facilities there. And in strategy, when you study strategy, there is a thing called CG. It has nothing to do with the center of gravity of the aircraft, but it is the same concept, which says if you disturb the CG of your enemy, then you are going to win. You are going to destabilize the country. So think about it. World Trade Center is the world's largest place where all the businesses take place. Pentagon, where all the military decisions are made, and of course nuclear facilities that they had planned. So this will shake up America. So if that was the strategy, they would mention it that this is attacking the CG of that country, or the center of gravity of that country, destabilizing the country. So in that, of course, close to 3,000 people were killed. New York alone, there were 2.8 billion wages were lost. People lost their salaries, and obviously 143,000 jobs were lost. World Trade Center damage itself cost $60 billion. So you can imagine, with this methodology, where they just lost 19 militants, they created such a huge damage to United States. And ground zero, anybody knows what is a ground zero? Clearing debris cost $750 million. What is a ground zero? Any idea? Ground zero?
Overall cost?
नहीं. ग्राउंड जीरो कहते हैं अगर कहीं न्यूक्लियर एक्सप्लोजन होता है तो उसका जो सेंटर पॉइंट है दैट्स कॉल्ड अ ग्राउंड जीरो. ओके, फ्रॉम द whatever is the center of that explosion is called. So in this explosion also, what is the bottom of the twin towers where it is actually located is called ground zero. तो वहाँ के उसके अतराफ, all around it, there was a lot of debris. This is not pronounced debris, it is pronounced debris, which means malba, right? Anything that is that falls, which is not supposed to be there. All the pieces of the metal and building and structure. Usko clearing itself costed $750 million. So, a lot of economical and also financial and moral defeat by this action. So that is what, but the fact of the matter is that there are areas that make this story doubtful. Why does it make it doubtful? Okay, number one, I told you about mass raid. Mass raid is like, 8, 16, maybe 24 aircraft going and attacking a place. When we do mass raids, it's even sometimes 4 aircraft can go as mass raid as well. It takes months of planning and months of training. Now, these pilots, according to the report, they were there for a short period of time. They were flying on Cessnas, very small aircraft. Flying a small aircraft and a big aircraft, there's a huge difference. And then flying mass raids, that means 4 different places. They're coordinating the timings and everything. It is not humanly possible. And these people are Arabs, where the ability to fly is not as good as many of the modern countries. Even, because I've taught people in Libya, I've taught people in Saudi Arabia, I have, taught in other Middle Eastern countries and people from Middle Eastern countries. And I can vouch that the capability of an average person is less than average, to say the least, in my opinion. So, carrying out such a big exercise with such a big aircraft, 757, 767, these were the 2 aircraft types that were used, American Air and United Airlines. And this is not possible that, you can jump in and without any, training or everything, fly in such a way so that you attack a certain place. Not possible, in my opinion. And their training was very, very minimal as per the reports. Maneuvering the aircraft is also very difficult, especially close to the ground, high-speed aircraft, heavier aircraft. The air pressure under the thing pushes you up. And to maneuver, beyond 30 degrees, 60 degrees bank, and turning and then aligning yourself with the target is not easy. So this makes it, to my mind, it makes it a very doubtful story. Then the second thing is that, again, if you look at the character of the militants, they said last night before the flight, they were in the bar drinking and all that. So if they're really motivated Muslims, they wouldn't do a thing like that to begin with. So again, this theory is, doubtful in my mind. So overall, I think this was, in my opinion. Anybody else wants to comment on this?
So the way the buildings came down.
Yes, very good. So that is also very interesting to note that no other building has ever fallen down like this. Aircraft has hit so many buildings, but it has not collapsed the way it was collapsed over there. So there are theories that there was some kind of a demolition bomb placed in the basement that was activated, and the entire building structure came down. So yes, you're right, absolutely. That is again something that creates a lot of doubt into how things turned out to be. Yes.
So is from different areas, 2 different aircraft were, let's say, the
That's right.
Is it possible to?
Yes, that is possible, because you have to do mass raid planning. It's a proper training and very, very advanced training. So that you're taking off from different places, and this does happen. In our planning, we do that. And you coordinate so that you reach a target in a certain time frame. One goes and the other goes and like that. But that is to expect from people who have just either taken some lessons of flying. It's almost impossible. Impossible.
It's already been decided.
Yeah.
From months or years.
Yes, absolutely. But they have to be trained. But they were not trained. They were all youngsters, and they were not from the Air Force, or they were not even commercial pilots. So, all right, let's come down to this Tenerife accident thing, which is, like I said, studied in human factors and all. Let's take this is the worst of the accidents that history in aviation has ever seen. So obviously, and it was all because of lack of communication. The KLM pilot did not know that the other aircraft is coming in from the other direction. They were just going in and positioning themselves from the other direction. And there was thick fog. They were all in a hurry to go back to their original because this was a diversion. Because the other airport where they were supposed to go was also, the weather was not good. So the weather had marginally cleared for takeoff, but not really at all the places, because sometimes fog is cleared in certain patch and then it is very thick in the other patches. So that is why they could not even see each other in a timely manner. And although the air traffic controller had told the other pilot to clear and told him to stop and wait for the instructions for takeoff, he just thought that he's been cleared for takeoff. So, this is, of course, I'm giving you a very short and brief thing on this, but the fact of the matter is that lack of communication and human factors not understanding. So there are various procedures after this that were developed. CRM also and human factors was emphasized. And right now, of course, all the airline pilots and everybody has to, follow these procedures and make sure that minimal confusion is taking place. All right, last thing in the day, just 2-3 minutes to go. I'll just give you my personal, very hairy experience. I was very close to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This was back in 84, 83, 84, somewhere in that time frame. And there were some aircraft that were to be, brand new aircraft were supposed to be tested, air tested in China, and then we were supposed to fly them back to Pakistan. So I, along with 6 other pilots, I was the leader, and 6 other pilots were with me. We were supposed to bring 6 aircraft back. One person was a spare person just in case somebody fell sick. So these are all single engine fighters, A5. And there's a place called Urumqi. So a C-130 aircraft took us over there and we landed. It was somewhere in December, early December, maybe 7th or 6th or 7th of December. When we landed over there, it was, clear skies, everything good. And we landed over there, we got out, we went to the hotel and, changed and took shower and everything. And we said, okay, tomorrow we'll look at the aircraft, we'll do the air test. And then day after tomorrow, we will fly back to Pakistan. So, all set, we slept. And in the morning when we woke up, it was all snow. Everything was white. It was such heavy snow that, believe you me, it was almost like 21 days that it continued to snow. And it snowed so heavily that we could not even get out of the hotel. The snow level was above the entrance door of the hotel. So they made sort of a tunnel in the snow, and then we could get out. So it was one of the heaviest snowfalls in that region. And obviously we had brought our clothes and everything and mentally prepared for 2 days, 3 days stay, that's it. And everybody was frustrated. So on the 22nd day when it stopped snowing, the meteorological department we call them Met officers. They come and they brief. They said, fine, you can see some clouds, but it's not going to snow and it's going to be clear. So you can see some clouds over here, but the moment you fly above, it will be clear. So I said, fine. They cleared the runway, and the way they clear the runway is also very interesting. They tie the jet engines behind a truck. They ignite the jet engines, and that is the time they clear, because of the heat of the engines, the runway gets cleared. Give me 1 second. I have an important call. Ali? Okay, fine. That's fine. I'll be there. Okay, that's good. 6 number is good. Okay, so at that time, I said, before, rather than somebody else fly, let me go and check the weather, and then I'll give a call so that other people can also come in and fly. Let me first get airborne and check the weather and do the air test. So I got airborne, and the moment I got airborne, I got into the clouds, and so I said the clouds are not breaking. So I went up to like 40,000 feet, and it was still cloudy all the way. So I descended down, and I came back. By the time I'm down below the clouds, I see everything is white again. It started snowing so heavily again that the runway was not there. It was not visible. Everything was white. I said, I have to go to the alternate airfield now. So I gave a call. He said, alternate airfield is 200 miles away, and that airfield is also snowing very heavily. You cannot go there. So I said, gosh, people are going to think, what went through my mind? I said, people are going to think that he's a very stupid leader. Why did he have to? He couldn't wait for a few more days. The weather is still doubtful, and he flew. And if I have to eject, and you lose an aircraft, and people are going to say Pakistani pilots are silly. So I said, I just have to land, and you make sure that the trucks with those engines behind them, they get onto the runway and clear the runway. So they would clear from one end, and the other end, it will start snowing again, and it will. So they continued on for like maybe 10-15 minutes, and by this time my fuel was also, because you don't carry too much of fuel once you're doing air test, and my fuel was almost coming down to zero. I said, no, I have to land whatever it is, and I said, the thing that I told you, cognitive dissonance. Should I eject or should I continue to land? Because I may not be able to land on the runway. It may go into somewhere else, and the aircraft may crash, and there could be various problems. The undercarriage may break and everything. So all the time I'm thinking, that what will Chinese say that this Pakistani guy could not handle this situation and all that. So Baral jitni bhi duaएं so partly, and I said, okay, I'm coming in to land, and I came in. I could barely see some indication that this is probably the runway. So and the fuel was also coming down. So I, alhamdulillah, managed to touch down, landed there, and the fuel went to zero and the engines flamed out. So you can imagine if it was like 30 seconds before, the engines would have flamed out in the air, and I would have had to eject. So this was a very unique experience that I cannot forget. I thought I'll share it with you guys. Okay, any questions, clarifications, anything? We are just on time, just a little over time, I guess. Nothing?
A lot of prayers for you.
Okay, thank you.
सर आपने recent crash कर दिया?
Recent क्या किया?
जो crash हुआ एयरफोर्स का जहाज वो मिस कर दिया.
वो मिस किया है?
यस सर, जो थंडर क्रैश हुआ अभी.
हाँ जी
वो मिस कर दिया है.
हाँ, वो मैंने उसको नहीं, मैं ऑब्वियसली एक वक्त में मतलब we barely touched these few incidents that were important. लेकिन obviously अगर आप वैसे देखें तो there are a lot of incidents that are that can be discussed. So inshallah some other time we'll discuss. Okay. Thank you very much everybody, and I will now stop the recording, and Zia Saab is going to be here very shortly. I'll stop recording.